The snow was falling so thick I could barely see my own hands. The wind was howling like 1,000 wolves, and the air felt sharp, as if it wanted to cut my skin. I was standing in the middle of the frozen road, my boots sinking into the white powder, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. "Grandma!" I screamed again. My voice broke into the cold night, but there was no answer, only the sound of the wind dragging my words away. Her red scarf lay in the snow, half buried, fluttering weakly. I knew that scarf. She knitted it herself last winter, humming softly while her fingers moved so quickly. It was the scarf she wore every day. And now it was here without her. I stumbled forward, my breath turning to ice in front of me. My hands shook, not only from the cold but from something worse, the fear that she was gone. Completely gone. The snow kept falling, covering the footprints that might have led me to her. It was like the world itself wanted to hide her from me. Somewhere in my chest, I felt a heavy crack, as if my heart had frozen solid. I didn't know if it was the winter air, or the truth I didn't want to face. I bent down to pick up the scarf, and that's when I saw it. A shadow. Tall. Still. Watching me from the edge of the forest. It hadn't always been like this. Before that winter, life in Maplewood had been quiet. We lived in a small, pale blue house at the edge of town, where the snow fell thicker than in the city and the nights were so dark you could see 1,000 stars. Grandma's garden sat frozen in the backyard, its summer colors now buried under white. Grandma was my best friend. My parents worked far away, so she was the one who tucked me in at night, the one who made hot cocoa just the way I liked it, with a mountain of cream and a sprinkle of cinnamon. But even in the warmth of our little house, I sometimes noticed a faraway look in her eyes. She'd sit by the fire, knitting, her fingers moving without pause, but her gaze would drift to the window, as if she was waiting for something, or someone. One morning, about 3 weeks before everything happened, I woke up to find Grandma not in her bed, but outside, shoveling snow in the dark. The street lamp glowed on her as she worked. Her breath was heavy. She looked smaller than usual. "Grandma, it's too early," I called from the porch. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that hides things. "Some mornings," she said, "don't wait for the sun." I didn't understand, but I went back inside. That was the first time I felt something strange was coming. Days passed, and the air grew colder. Maplewood's winter festival lit up the town with strings of golden lights, music, and the smell of roasted chestnuts. Grandma held my hand as we walked past stalls of handmade crafts and steaming food. She bought me a tiny snow globe with a red-roofed house inside. "So you can carry a piece of home," she said. That night she coughed for the first time. A dry, stubborn cough that wouldn't go away. She said it was nothing, but I started noticing her moving slower, getting tired quicker. Then came the storm warnings. The weatherman's voice was serious on the radio. "This will be the harshest winter Maplewood has seen in 50 years. People rushed to stock up on food and firewood." Grandma didn't seem worried, but I caught her looking at the scarf she kept by the door, the red one, like it was more than just a piece of wool. The first day of the storm we stayed inside, playing card games and watching the snow pile higher and higher outside the windows. But on the second night I woke up to the sound of the front door closing. I thought it was just the wind, until I saw the scarf missing from its hook. I pulled on my coat and boots, my heart beating faster. Outside, the cold slapped my face, the kind of cold that steals your breath. The snow was already up to my knees, but I could see faint footprints leading away from the house and into the forest. I followed them, calling her name, but the wind swallowed my voice. The snow kept falling, and soon the footprints were fading. That's when I saw the red scarf, half buried in the snow. And the shadow. The shadow didn't move. It was just there watching. I couldn't tell if it was a person or something else. My fingers gripped the scarf, my heart racing so hard it hurt. The shadow tilted its head. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, even the wind seemed to pause. My fingers were stiff around Grandma's scarf, the wool scratchy against my gloves. The shadow took one slow step toward me. Snow crunched under its weight. I wanted to run, but my legs felt heavy, like the snow had trapped me in place. My mind screamed move, but my body wouldn't listen. Then, just as it reached the edge of the light from the moon, it turned away. Without a word. Without a sound, it vanished into the black wall of trees. The forest swallowed it whole. I stood there shaking, my heart still pounding, and realized something terrible. If the shadow had been following Grandma, then she could already be deeper in those woods. Grandma! My voice cracked. I didn't care if the shadow heard me. I ran forward, but the snow pulled at my boots like quicksand. Every step felt slower, heavier. After a few minutes, I had to stop. My chest burned from the cold air. I couldn't see any more footprints, just endless white. I turned back toward the house, clutching the scarf. I hated myself for it, but I knew I couldn't survive alone in that forest. Not in this storm. Not tonight. When I finally reached the porch, my fingers were so numb I could barely turn the handle. Inside, the house felt empty in a way I had never felt before. I put the scarf on the table and lit the fire. The flames danced, but they didn't warm the cold sitting inside my chest. Every creak of the house made me think it was her coming home. But it wasn't. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, the storm had not stopped. The radio said the roads were blocked, and no one could get in or out of Maplewood. I sat by the window, staring at the falling snow, hoping to see a figure in the distance. Instead, I saw something else, footprints. Fresh ones. Coming toward the house from the direction of the forest. I jumped to my feet, my heart racing. I grabbed my coat and ran to the door, flinging it open. The cold stabbed my face, but I didn't care. The footprints stopped at the edge of the porch. But there was no one there. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the white silence. The wind howled, tossing snow in my face. Then I noticed something, half hidden in the snow on the porch steps. A small wooden carving. Of a bird. Its wings spread wide. It wasn't ours. I bent down, picked it up, and felt the wood smooth and warm, as if someone had just been holding it. Suddenly, the phone rang inside the house. The old landline's sharp ring cut through the silence like a scream. I ran inside, grabbed the receiver. Hello. Nothing. Just breathing. Slow, steady breathing. Then a whisper. She's not yours anymore. The line went dead. I stood there holding the receiver long after the line went dead. The words echoed in my head like they were still being whispered into my ear. She's not yours anymore. I didn't know if it was a threat or a warning. I didn't know if it meant Grandma was alive, or if it meant something worse. I slowly put the phone back on its cradle, my hands trembling. The wooden bird was still in my other hand, the little carved wings digging into my palm. Whoever had left it knew where I lived. They had been close enough to touch my door. I locked it. Every lock. The day dragged on like it was made of ice. I kept glancing at the window, half hoping to see Grandma trudging through the snow, half dreading to see that shadow again. The snowstorm was still raging, turning the world into a blur of white. Around noon, I tried calling the police, but the phone line was dead now. Completely silent. I couldn't even get a dial tone. The radio said more power lines were falling in the storm, and we might lose electricity next. I made soup. I didn't eat it. My stomach felt like a hard knot. That evening, I lit every candle in the house. The flickering light made the shadows dance on the walls, which didn't help. Every time the wind pushed against the house, I flinched. I kept thinking about that shadow in the forest. About the way it had stopped. About the way it had turned. When night fell again, I tried to sleep, but my body wouldn't let me. My ears were straining for any sound. And that's when I heard it. A soft tap 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 at the window. I froze in bed, every muscle tight. The tapping came again, sharper this time. My heart was pounding so loud I thought whoever was outside could hear it. I sat up, slowly, and reached for the flashlight I kept by the bed. I clicked it on and pointed it at the window. At first, there was nothing but snow clinging to the glass. Then movement. A face. Pressed right against the glass, pale and still. My breath caught. It wasn't Grandma. The eyes were wide open, staring right at me. And then it smiled. I screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over the lamp. By the time I got to the window, the face was gone, leaving only melting streaks where it had been. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, the storm had finally slowed, but the world outside was buried in snow. I stepped onto the porch, squinting against the pale sunlight. That's when I saw it. In the middle of the yard, sticking straight up out of the snow, was another wooden carving. Not a bird this time. A hand, pointing toward the forest. The wooden hand was carved so perfectly it almost looked real. The fingers were long and thin, each nail carefully etched into the wood. Its arm ended in a rough stump, as though it had been broken off something larger. But it wasn't the detail that chilled me. It was the direction it pointed. The forest. The same forest where I'd seen the shadow. The same forest where Grandma's scarf had been buried in the snow. I stared at it for a long time, my boots planted in the icy crust of the yard. Part of me wanted to throw the carving into the fire and forget I'd ever seen it. Another part knew I couldn't. Not if Grandma was out there somewhere. I took a deep breath, slipped the carving into my coat pocket, and went inside to gather what I'd need. A flashlight, a thermos of hot tea, a small knife from the kitchen, and tucked into the inside pocket of my coat, Grandma's red scarf. The forest was quieter than I expected. No howling wind, no creaking trees, just silence. My boots crunched through the snow as I followed the line the carving's finger had pointed to. After about 15 minutes, I saw something ahead. A shape. At first, I thought it was another tree bent under the snow. But as I got closer, I saw it wasn't a tree at all. It was the door. Standing by itself in the middle of the forest. No walls. No house. Just an old wooden doorframe stuck in the ground. Its paint peeling and hinges rusted. I walked around it. There was nothing on the other side, just more forest. But nailed to the center of the door was a piece of paper. It was torn, the edges frozen stiff, but I could still make out the words. Do not follow her. The letters were jagged, written as if by a shaking hand. A twig snapped somewhere behind me. I spun around, my flashlight beam slicing through the trees. No one. I turned back toward the door, and the paper was gone. I felt a cold rush that had nothing to do with the weather. My breath quickened. I stepped backward, my eyes scanning every shadow. Then faint at first but growing clearer, I heard it. A song. It was soft and slow, carrying through the trees. I knew that song. Grandma's lullaby. The one she used to hum when I couldn't sleep. I followed it. I didn't think. I didn't even notice that the snow under my boots was no longer fresh. There were footprints ahead of me now. Small, delicate ones. The song grew louder until it felt like it was right behind me. I spun around. And there she was. Grandma. Her hair was dusted with snow. Her eyes calm, almost too calm. She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that didn't belong to her. Come with me, she said softly. I've found a place where it's always warm. She reached out her hand. Her skin was pale. Too pale. I was about to take a step toward her when I noticed something behind her. The shadow. It was standing in the trees, still as stone. But this time, I could see its face. And it was mine. I froze, my breath clouding the air between us. The shadow's face, my face, stared back at me from the tree line. Same eyes. Same mouth. Same scar on the chin from when I fell off my bike years ago. It didn't move. Neither did Grandma. The snow crunched softly as she held her hand out further, urging me to take it. You'll understand when you come, she whispered. My heart was thudding so hard it hurt. I took a step back. The shadow tilted its head in perfect time with mine, as if we were mirrors. No, I said, my voice shaking. Grandma's smile didn't fade, but her eyes darkened. Then you'll freeze out here, just like last time. Last time? I blinked. When I opened my eyes again, the shadow was gone. Only the bare trees stood behind her now. Please, she said, softer this time. I wanted to run. I wanted to grab her and drag her back to the house. But something deep in my chest told me she wasn't the same person who had tucked me in every night. Something had changed her, or taken her. Before I could decide, she turned and began walking deeper into the woods. The lullaby started again. I followed at a distance, keeping my flashlight low. The trees grew closer together, their branches heavy with snow. It was colder here, but the air felt heavy as if holding its breath. We came to a small clearing. In the center was a well, its stones covered in frost. Grandma stopped beside it and looked down into the darkness. Do you remember, she said, when you asked where your grandfather went? The question hit me like a slap. She never talked about him. Ever. He came here, she whispered. I stepped closer to the edge, shining my flashlight into the well. The beam barely reached the bottom. The air rising from it was warm, like the breath of some sleeping animal. Grandma, I said, my voice cracking. We have to go home. She looked at me with that same too calm smile. This is home now. And then before I could move, she climbed onto the edge of the well. Wait. I lunged forward, but she leaned back, her arms spread wide, and let herself fall in. I screamed, my voice tearing through the silent trees. The flashlight slipped from my hand, tumbling after her. The beam spun in the dark until it went out. Silence. Then, from the depths of the well, her voice rose again, soft, steady, and not quite hers. Your turn. The word echoed from the well like it had been spoken into a cavern the size of the world. Your turn. My blood felt thick in my veins. I stared into the black mouth of the well, hoping, no praying. I would see Grandma's pale hair, her face tilted up toward me. But the darkness swallowed everything. Even the snow seemed afraid to fall in. The warm air rising from the depths curled against my face, heavy and damp, almost like breath. It smelled faintly of earth and something sweet, like rotting fruit. I knelt beside the edge, my hands gripping the frostbitten stone so hard the cold burned into my palms. Grandma! I yelled, leaning so far forward my stomach pressed against the wall of the well. Grandma, answer me. Nothing. No something. Faint, barely there. A rustle. A whisper. It was her voice, but it wasn't words this time. Just a sound, low and drawn out, almost like a hum. I tried to steady my breathing. My mind was racing through 1,000 possibilities. Maybe she had fallen onto a ledge. Maybe she was trapped but alive. Maybe I could climb down, tie my scarf to a tree, use it as a rope. I stopped. The red scarf was warm in my coat pocket. When I pulled it out, my stomach dropped. It was wet. The smell that clung to it was the same sweet, rotten scent from the well. I threw it to the snow as if it could burn me. My fingers felt suddenly raw and exposed, the cold rushing into my skin. I forced myself to look down again, and that's when I saw it. Light. It wasn't from my fallen flashlight. I could see its dull metal shape lodged halfway down. Its beam dark. This light was further below, shifting, almost pulsing. And then I heard my name. Not yelled. Not whispered. Said slowly, like someone tasting each letter. Millimetro, ah. It didn't sound like Grandma anymore. It sounded like me. I stumbled backward, my boots slipping on the ice. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I turned away from the well, my breath coming fast in the cold air. Snow began to fall again, but slower this time, fat flakes that drifted lazily through the air. The forest seemed to lean in around me. That's when I noticed something new: carvings. Not wooden ones left in the snow. These were cut directly into the trees. Faces. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all at eye level, staring out of the bark. Each face was different. Some twisted in pain, some smiling faintly, some with their mouths open as if frozen mid-scream. And in the middle of them all, one face stopped me cold. It was mine. Exactly mine. Every line, every freckle. Even the scar on my chin. I took a shaky step backward, and the crunch of my boots on the snow sounded far too loud in the heavy silence. Something moved behind one of the carved faces. Not just the light shifting on the bark, no, something inside it. The wood bulged slightly like the face was pressing outward. I didn't stay to see more. I turned and ran. The forest seemed to stretch and twist around me. Paths I thought I knew bent in unfamiliar directions, and the more I tried to keep straight, the more the trees closed in. Then I heard the lullaby again. It wasn't coming from ahead or behind, it was everywhere. Around me. Inside me. Each note landed heavy in my chest, pulling me like a rope toward something I couldn't see. I broke into a clearing I didn't recognize. The snow here was untouched, smooth as glass. In the center was a single chair. Grandma sat in it. Her head was bowed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her red scarf was gone. Her coat hung loosely from her shoulders, like it didn't fit her anymore. Grandma, I breathed, stepping forward. Her head lifted slowly. It wasn't her face. The features were blurred, like someone had pressed their thumb into wet clay. Her eyes were too large, her smile too wide, and her skin was the pale, dry color of birch bark. "You found me," she said in my voice. My breath caught in my throat. I don't understand," I whispered. Her smile widened further, stretching her cheeks in a way that hurt to look at. "You do. You've always known." She stood, the snow under her chair completely undisturbed, as if she hadn't been sitting in it at all. Behind her, something rose from the snow. A hand. Not a carved one this time. A real one. Gray and thin, with nails like splintered wood. It gripped the back of the chair and pulled itself upward. An arm followed. Then shoulders. Then a head. It was the shadow. Only now I could see it clearly. It was me. Every detail. Except its skin was dark as soot. And its eyes were empty hollows. It stepped forward, moving in perfect time with my own panicked breathing. "Don't be afraid," the thing wearing Grandma's coat said, still using my voice. "We just want to keep you warm." I shook my head and backed away, my boots sinking deep into the snow. My chest ached. My vision blurred. Then without warning the shadow lunged. Its hand, my hand, grabbed my arm, ice cold and impossibly strong. The cold shot through my body like a lightning strike, locking my muscles in place. The other figure, the one with Grandma's coat, leaned close. I could feel its breath, warm and sweet-rotten, against my cheek. "This is the only way," it whispered. And then the ground beneath us gave way. The snow collapsed like a trapdoor, and we were falling, all three of us, the shadow, the not Grandma, and me, into darkness. The fall was silent, like sinking into deep water. My limbs felt heavy, the air thick and warm around me. Shapes slid past in the dark, faces and hands reaching out from the blackness. One of the hands brushed my cheek, and 1,000 voices spoke at once, their tones overlapping until they were almost music. "We've been waiting for you," I gasped, my lungs filling with warm, heavy air that made me dizzy. My vision flickered. Then light. A faint glow appeared below us, growing brighter. It was the same pulsing light I'd seen at the bottom of the well. We landed softly, like the air itself caught us. I stumbled forward, my boots sinking into ground that wasn't snow anymore, but soft, damp moss. We were in a vast cavern. The walls shimmered faintly, covered in strange, glowing fungi. Pools of water dotted the floor, reflecting the light in ripples. In the center of the cavern stood something impossible. A tree. Its trunk was pale and smooth like bone, and its roots sprawled across the cavern floor, drinking from the glowing pools. The branches stretched so high I couldn't see where they ended. From them hung dozens, no hundreds, of the wooden carvings I'd seen before. Birds. Hands. Faces. One of the faces turned as I stared at it. It blinked. The shadow released my arm. The thing in Grandma's coat stepped forward toward the tree, raising its arms like a worshiper. "This is where we belong," it said. And from the base of the tree, something began to crawl out. It was shaped like a person, but its skin was the same pale bark as the tree. Its eyes were deep hollows filled with the same faint glow as the fungi. As it straightened, the carvings above it began to sway, clicking against each other in a wooden rhythm. The creature reached out its hand to me. "Emma," it said in Grandma's voice, "it's time to choose." The shadow moved beside it, tilting its head in unison with mine again. The air in the cavern grew thicker, almost solid, pressing against my chest. My thoughts felt slow, heavy, like the warm air was seeping into my brain. They both waited. Somewhere far above, I thought I heard the wind again. The sound of the real world. The cold, the snow, the empty house. I took a step back. The shadow mirrored me. The bark-skinned creature smiled and extended its hand further. The thing in Grandma's coat began humming the lullaby again. And then, from somewhere deep in the cavern, a scream ripped through the air. It wasn't human. All three of them, the shadow, the not Grandma, and the bark-skinned thing, turned toward the sound at once. In that heartbeat, I ran. I didn't care where. I didn't care what waited in the dark. I just knew I had to move before whatever made that scream found us. The glowing fungi blurred past as I ran, my boots slipping on the damp ground. The air grew cooler the further I went, and I hoped, I might be heading toward an exit. But then, just ahead, the tunnel narrowed, and standing in the middle of it was a figure. It was Grandma, the real one. Her eyes were wide, her face pale, her lips trembling. "Emma," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't let them take you." Before I could reach her, something in the shadows behind her moved. Something enormous. At first, I thought the thing behind her was part of the cavern wall, just a mass of rock and roots. Then it moved. Slowly, the shadows peeled away, and I saw it was hunched, its back scraping the low ceiling. Its skin was the same pale bark as the tree in the cavern, but cracked in places, revealing something darker underneath. It had no face. Where a face should have been was only a smooth surface, like stretched paper. But from the blankness, I could still feel its attention on me, pressing, heavy, like a hand gripping the back of my neck. Grandma's eyes darted toward the creature, then back to me. "Run," she mouthed. But my legs felt like they had sunk into the cavern floor. The thing stepped forward, each movement slow and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world to reach me. Its limbs were too long, bending in ways they shouldn't. It stopped beside Grandma. One of its arms lowered toward her, and she flinched, but it didn't touch her. Instead, its fingers stretched toward me. I forced myself to step backward. "Stay away," I said, though my voice shook so badly it barely sounded like a threat. From somewhere deeper in the cavern, the humming started again, the same lullaby. But this time it was warped, as if the notes were being played backward. The thing's head tilted toward the sound. In that moment, Grandma moved. She shoved the creature's arm aside and ran toward me. I snapped out of my paralysis and met her halfway. She grabbed my wrist with icy fingers. "This way," she hissed. We plunged into a side tunnel, the glowing light from the cavern fading behind us. My boots splashed through shallow water. The air here was sharper, cooler, maybe leading to the surface. But then I heard it. A scraping sound. From behind. From ahead. From everywhere. The tunnels weren't empty. Shapes began stepping out of the darkness. Some were bark-skinned, some shadowy like the one that wore my face, and some were half-carved, their wooden features incomplete, pieces of flesh still clinging in odd patches. Their heads all turned toward me at the same time. Grandma yanked me down another passage, narrower this time. My shoulders brushed the walls. The smell of rot grew stronger. My breath came fast, echoing in the tight space. Finally, the tunnel opened into a chamber. First I thought we were alone. Then I saw them. Dozens of people. They were standing perfectly still, their feet submerged in a glowing pool at the chamber's center. Their eyes were open, but their faces were blank. Not expressionless but erased. "They're asleep," Grandma whispered, her voice trembling. "If they wake, it's over." Before I could ask what she meant, movement stirred in the pool. Something was rising from beneath the surface. It broke through in silence, a figure taller than the rest, its skin wet and glistening, its head crowned with twisting branches. In its hand it held a carving knife. The same knife Grandma used to make me wooden toys when I was little. And in its other hand, it was holding my face. Not a mask, not a carving. My actual face, skin and all, impossibly real, impossibly wrong, as if it had been peeled away while I wasn't looking. It lifted the face toward its own blank head. I couldn't move. My mind refused to accept what I was seeing. That thing was holding me. The face hung limp in its hand, pale and soft, the eyelids shut as if it were sleeping. Its mouth was slightly open, and in the still glow of the cavern it almost looked like it might speak. The branch-crowned figure tilted its blank head, studying the face like an artist deciding where to place the final brushstroke. "Don't look at it," Grandma hissed, her grip tightening on my arm. "Don't let it see you see." But I couldn't look away. Slowly, the figure pressed my face against its own smooth surface. The skin clung instantly like wet paper to glass. It adjusted it carefully, pulling at the edges, smoothing it into place with long, deliberate strokes of its fingers. Then the eyelids opened. And they were mine. It smiled. My smile, crooked at the left corner just like it had been since I was a kid. The sight sent a sick, cold shiver all the way to my bones. When it spoke, the voice was exactly mine too. "You're late." I stumbled back, hitting the cavern wall. What are you?" I whispered. The figure stepped out of the glowing pool, water dripping from its legs. Each drop hissed faintly when it hit the stone, like the ground didn't want to touch it. "I'm what you leave behind," it said. "And what you become." The others in the pool, those blank, sleeping people, shifted slightly, as though the air had changed. I realized they were all facing me now. Grandma pulled at my sleeve. "We have to go. Now." The figure cocked its head. "Why? You've been walking toward me your whole life." It stepped closer, and the shadows of the chamber leaned with it. Grandma moved fast. She grabbed a chunk of loose stone from the ground and hurled it at the figure's head. It struck with a sound like hitting wood. The face cracked. Beneath the split, there was nothing. Only blackness deeper than shadow, like the absence of everything. The figure didn't flinch. It reached up, pressed the cracked edges together, and the face healed before my eyes. I ran. Grandma was already ahead of me, darting toward a narrow gap in the far wall. We squeezed through, scraping our shoulders on the stone. Behind us, I could hear the figure's footsteps, slow, unhurried, like it knew we couldn't escape. The gap opened into another tunnel, steeper this time, the ground sloping upward. My lungs burned, but the cooler air gave me hope. Then something slammed into the wall beside me. I turned just in time to see a wooden carving of my own head embedded in the stone, the grain of the wood twisting into my exact features. More carvings followed, whistling through the air like thrown knives. They weren't missing by accident. They were hurting us. We burst into a chamber where the ceiling had partially collapsed. A shaft of daylight poured through, weak and gray, but more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen. "We're close," Grandma gasped. But before we could climb toward the light, something dropped from above. It landed between us and the way out, crouched low, its long arms braced against the ground. When it lifted its head, I saw it wasn't the branch-crowned figure. It was the shadow. My shadow. Only now it was smiling. It stood there in the narrow path of daylight, its black skin drinking in the light instead of reflecting it. My shadow, my perfect outline. Except its teeth gleamed like wet bone when it smiled. It didn't move at first. It just watched. Grandma stepped in front of me. "Stay behind me," she said, her voice low. The shadow's head tilted, mirroring hers. Then it stepped forward, and I realized something that made my stomach twist. It wasn't casting a shadow of its own. It was my shadow. As it walked toward us, I felt a strange tugging in my chest, like my breath was being pulled out in slow strands. My legs went weak. Every step it took forward, I felt myself take one small step inward, like part of me was being reeled in without my permission. Grandma reached into her coat and pulled out something I hadn't seen before. A tiny mirror, no bigger than the palm of her hand. The silver frame was dented and scratched, but the glass was flawless. She held it up toward the shadow. The thing froze. For a heartbeat I saw myself reflected there, my real self pale and shaking. And then in the same glass, the shadow's face began to ripple, its smile twisting into something raw and ugly. It made a sound I can't describe, like fabric tearing underwater. "Emma, climb," Grandma snapped. I turned to the pile of rubble leading up to the daylight and started scrambling upward, my fingers slipping on damp stone. Behind me I heard the shadow lunge. Grandma met it head-on. There was a crash, a low grunt, and the sound of glass shattering. I looked back. The mirror lay in pieces, glittering in the dim light. The shadow had stopped moving, its form shaking like heat waves on pavement. But as I watched, it began to pull itself back together, the blackness knitting over the ripples. "Go!" Grandma shouted. I climbed faster, my knees scraping against rock. The daylight was close enough now that I could feel the cold of the outside air brushing my face. Then a hand closed around my ankle. I kicked hard, my boot connecting with something solid. The grip loosened and I scrambled the last few feet toward the gap. My head broke into the open air, snow and wind rushing against my skin. I was about to pull myself all the way out when I heard it, Grandma's voice. "Don't leave me here." I froze. The words were desperate, trembling, but something about them was wrong. Too slow, too even. I looked back down through the gap. Grandma was standing there, her face calm now, her hands hanging loosely at her sides. The shadow was gone. "I'm fine," she said, smiling faintly. "We can go together now." My heart hammered. "Prove it," I said. "Tell me the name of the song you used to hum to me." Her smile didn't change. "You know the one." She took a step forward, her boots not making a sound on the stone. And from deeper in the cavern, behind her, I heard the real grandma scream my name. The scream echoed through the tunnels, raw, urgent, full of the grandma I knew. The one in front of me didn't flinch. Snow swirled outside the opening above me, the wind calling like an escape I could almost touch. But if I climbed out now without knowing, I'd live forever with the question, had I left her down there? Had I abandoned her? The fake grandma stepped closer. It's cold out there, Emma. You'll never make it without me. Her voice was soft, like fresh snow falling on the roof at night, but under it was something hollow. I'd heard that same hollowness in the humming that lured me here. I slid back down into the chamber. My boots splashed in shallow water. Stay where you are, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She tilted her head, her eyes never leaving mine. Why fight me? I can take away the ache. You won't have to carry what she made you carry. The loss. The loneliness. That was the moment I understood what this thing wanted. It wasn't just my face. It wanted my pain, my memories, the pieces that made me me. And for a second I almost wanted to give them to her. To let it all go and stop feeling the way that winter had made me feel. But pain is part of the shape of a person. Without it, you're not yourself anymore. So I turned my back on her and ran toward the scream. The tunnels twisted and dipped. I called out for Grandma, my voice bouncing back to me in warped echoes. Then ahead I saw her, huddled near a wall, one hand pressed to her ribs, her face pale but alive. When she saw me, her eyes filled with relief so sharp it hurt to look at. Emma, she breathed. I helped her to her feet. We're getting out. But the air in the tunnel shifted. Cold, but not the good, clean cold of the outside. This was the dead cold, the kind that gets into your bones and stays there. The shadow slid out of the wall ahead of us, the branch-crowned figure behind it. And behind them, the fake grandma emerged, still wearing my face. They had blocked the way. Grandma squeezed my hand. There's only one way to beat them. You have to keep walking toward the pain. I didn't understand. But then she pressed something into my palm, a shard of the broken mirror. The moment my reflection stared back at me from that piece of glass, I felt the pull, the truth of what I'd been carrying. The winter that froze my heart wasn't just about the cold outside. It was the winter Dad didn't come home. The winter Mom stayed in bed and didn't speak. The winter Grandma was the only one left to make me believe in tomorrow. I looked up at the fake grandma, at the shadow, at the figure wearing my face. You can't have me, I said. You can't have any of it. Then I raised the shard to my own face and pressed it hard against my cheek. Light spilled out, not from the glass, but from inside me. The walls shook. The shadow shrieked. The figure's stolen face peeled away like burning paper. The fake grandma staggered back, clutching at her blank skin. The light grew brighter, hotter, until the cavern looked like daylight itself had poured in. And then, everything went white. When I woke, I was lying in the snow outside. The storm had passed. Grandma was beside me, her hand in mine, her eyes wet but smiling. We never spoke of what happened down there again. But she didn't have to tell me the lesson. Sometimes you survive winter not by waiting for the thaw, but by keeping your own warmth alive, no matter how much the cold tries to take. And even now, years later, when the wind howls against my window at night, I remember the way that false smile looked in the dark. Because the cold will always try to come back. But so will I. The winter that froze my heart wasn't just a season, it was a test. A test of how much loneliness a soul can carry before it shatters, and how much light it can fight to keep alive when the dark comes to take it. That cavern, those creatures, the false smiles, they weren't only made of shadow and ice. They were made of all the nights I thought I'd never feel warm again, of every empty chair at the table, of every memory I wished I could hand over just to stop hurting. But the lesson I learned is the one that keeps me standing. Pain is proof you're still alive. It means you still care. It means you still remember. And though the snow that year seemed endless, though it buried the world and chilled the marrow in my bones, I found that there is a warmth you can't lose if you guard it. The warmth of love, of memory, of the people who refused to let you walk into the cold alone. I survived that winter. And every winter since. Because my heart, though scarred, never froze again.